My name is Emma. One Christmas lunch, my own mother told me, in front of relatives, that I was a leech and needed to leave her house that day. A year later, I hosted Christmas next door. If you've ever been pushed out by family, tell your story in the comments. Christmas lunch at my mother's house always ran on routines. Someone set extra chairs. Someone argued about parking. I was moving between the stove and the dining table, placing dishes where Diane pointed, accepting polite thank yous from aunts who never learned my schedule. It felt normal enough. Crowded, warm, noisy, but normal. Diane tapped her glass with a fork. The sound cut through conversation faster than any raised voice. She didn't stand. She didn't smile either. "So," she said, looking at me instead of the table, "how long is this arrangement supposed to last?" A cousin snorted. Someone else kept chewing. I stopped with a serving spoon halfway to the platter. "I work," I said. "You know that." Diane waved a hand like she was clearing smoke. "Working and paying your way aren't the same thing." The room shifted. Chairs scraped. One of my uncles leaned back to watch. "At 24, she continued, most adults aren't still living off their parents." Another laugh came from the far end of the table. It wasn't loud, just enough to land. "You can't live off me forever," Diane said. The sentence sat there. No one challenged it. No one asked what bills I covered or which groceries were mine. Diane nodded to herself like a point had been proven. "After we eat," she added, "you should pack up." I set the spoon down. A plate clinked. Someone poured more wine. "Today?" I asked. "Yes, today." Diane checked her phone. "It's better this way. Clean." An aunt cleared her throat and said something about the turkey drying out. Conversation tried to restart, failed, then limped on. Diane leaned toward another relative. "The paperwork's already handled," she said too casually, "so it's simple." No one had mentioned paperwork before. The word stuck. From the kitchen doorway, my brother asked if the security thing was still broken. "The one by the back door," he said. Diane answered without looking up. "It's been out all week." Her phone lit again. A name flashed on the screen before she turned it face down. It wasn't anyone at the table. My own phone buzzed in my pocket. A calendar reminder slid across the screen. Catering prep, 3 p.m. I swiped it away while standing in a room where I had apparently stopped living. "Eat first," Diane said. "We'll talk details later." No one moved to help me serve anymore. I finished anyway because plates still needed food and muscle memory doesn't stop on command. Lunch ended without a toast. People hugged Diane before leaving. Some nodded at me. No one asked where I was going. In the hallway, I pulled a duffel from the closet and filled it with whatever came to hand. Shoes, a charger, a jacket. The front door opened easily. Sunlight hit the porch. Behind me, dishes were already being stacked. The door closed while my phone buzzed again. I stood there enough for the lock to click and the house to keep eating without me. Rosa's couch was shorter than it looked in photos. The cushions dipped toward the middle, like they'd made a decision years ago and stuck with it. A folded blanket sat on the armrest, already laid out, no questions attached. "You can stay," Rosa said. "No timeline. We'll figure it out." The phone on the coffee table started buzzing before the door finished closing. A group chat lit up first. An aunt typed that everyone had been shocked. A cousin followed with a sad face emoji and the word misunderstood. Someone else suggested I call Diane and apologize so things wouldn't get worse. Another message arrived, private this time. "You didn't have to make a scene," it read. I didn't answer. The screen went dark on its own. Rosa slid a mug across the table. "Drink this before you answer anything," she said. By Monday morning, the questions had shifted from emotional to logistical. An email from a client asked where to send invoices going forward. Another wanted confirmation of my business address for compliance purposes. The form didn't accept between places as a valid option. A catering order for a retirement lunch disappeared from the calendar without explanation. An hour later, a polite message followed. "We've decided to go in a different direction due to concerns about stability." No one defined stability. They never do. Rosa listened without interrupting while I read the message out loud. She nodded once. "That didn't come from nowhere," she said. "Someone talked." Another notification arrived. This one wasn't subtle. Diane had called my uncle. My uncle had called my cousin. By dinner, the story had sharpened into something cleaner. Tough love. A grown child refusing to launch. A mother finally setting boundaries. Rosa tapped the table with one finger. "Don't correct anyone yet," she said. "Save everything." "What, like screenshots?" I asked. "All of it," she said. "Texts, emails, voicemails, dates, times. Don't react, just collect." Her phone rang while she was talking. She glanced at the caller ID and shook her head. "That's your mother," she said. "She found my number through someone." Rosa let it ring out. No voicemail followed. That night, Rosa mentioned the house next door to Diane's while scrolling listings. It came out casually, the way people mention weather. "Did you know the place beside her went up for sale?" she asked. "No," I said. "Listed fast," she added. "Price dropped twice." The address looked familiar in a way I couldn't place. Rosa turned the screen so I could see it better. "Owner wants out before the end of the year," she said. "That's not normal for that block." The thought stayed where it was, unnamed, untouched. Tuesday brought a different kind of message. The commercial kitchen sent an automated email confirming my next rental slot. Subject line: "You are now fully responsible for your own bookings." Rosa laughed once when she read it, not amused, just surprised by the timing. "Well," she said, "that's efficient." By Wednesday, the bank joined the conversation. A letter arrived in a plain envelope forwarded from Diane's address. It asked for verification of residency tied to my accounts. There was a deadline printed in bold near the bottom. Rosa read it twice. "They didn't send this randomly," she said. My phone buzzed again. This time, Diane's name filled the screen. I didn't answer. Rosa watched without comment. A voicemail came through minutes later. "I'm just trying to help," Diane said. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." The message cut off mid-sentence, like she'd decided she'd said enough. That evening, Rosa cleared a space on the dining table and set up a stack of folders. She labeled one with a marker and slid it toward me. "Start here," she said. "No commentary, just facts." A knock came from the hallway as a neighbor passed by and asked if Rosa was hosting again. She said no, not tonight. The neighbor nodded and left. The bank letter sat open between us. The deadline stared back from the page. I reached for my phone, opened the calendar, and checked how many days were left before the date circled in ink. The listing showed up again on Rosa's phone while she was making coffee. Same address, same photos. The price had dropped another $15,000 overnight. "That's fast," she said. Too fast. The broker's name was listed at the bottom. It wasn't one I recognized, but Diane's neighborhood wasn't large. People reused the same contacts. A text came in before I finished reading. "You're embarrassing the family," Diane wrote. "People are asking questions." No question followed. Another message arrived anyway. "This isn't how adults handle conflict." Rosa glanced over. "Don't answer," she said. "Not yet." Instead, she searched the broker's name. A company page came up with a headshot and a phone number. There was also a review from 3 weeks earlier, thanking him for discretion during a sensitive transition. The date landed hard. 3 weeks ago put it before Christmas. I called the number. It rang twice. "This is Mark," he said. "How can I help you?" "I'm calling about the house on Laurel," I said, "the one next to my mother's." There was a pause long enough to register. "Are you working with an agent?" he asked. "No." Another pause. "I can share general information," he said, "but nothing confidential." "That's fine," I said. "I just had a question about timing." "What kind of timing?" "When the seller decided to list," I said. He exhaled, not sharply, but like someone closing a door carefully. "That property's been in motion for a while," he said, "before the holidays." I thanked him and hung up. Diane's words from the table replayed without invitation. Paperwork's already handled. She hadn't been speaking metaphorically. She had been reporting progress. The texts kept coming. You're putting me in an impossible position. I didn't want it to be this way. None of them asked where I was staying. None mentioned the bank letter. Rosa drove me to the broker's office the next afternoon. The building sat between a dental practice and a tax service. A sign on the door promised transparency. The receptionist looked up when we walked in. "I'm here about the Laurel property," I said. She typed, stopped, then looked back at me. "Are you related to Diane Calder?" she asked. "Yes." Her expression tightened just enough. "I'll check," she said. She disappeared behind a door and came back with a man who introduced himself as Mark. He didn't offer his hand. "I can't discuss that listing with you," he said. "Why not?" I asked. "There's a potential conflict," he said. "Family involvement." "I'm not a buyer," I said. "I just want to know." "It's not appropriate," he said. "I'm sorry." Rosa stepped in. "We're not asking for privileged details," she said. "Just confirmation of dates." Mark shook his head. "I can't even confirm that," he said. The receptionist cleared her throat and pointed to a tablet on the desk. "If you want to schedule a viewing," she said, "you can do it online." I pulled out my phone and opened the site while standing there. The page loaded slowly, then refreshed. Slot unavailable. I tried another time. Same message. Rosa leaned over. "Try next week," she said. Slot unavailable. Mark watched without comment. "That happens," he said. "High demand." Outside, Diane's name filled the screen again. "You went to the office," her message read. "Please stop." I didn't reply. That night, Rosa forwarded me an email she'd received from a neighbor. It mentioned rumors about Diane downsizing. It also mentioned a name I hadn't heard before, a friend of the family, someone who helped with finances. Rosa circled it on the screen. "That's not random," she said. Another search confirmed it. The friend's name appeared on a public record tied to a recent earnest money deposit. The amount matched the Laurel property. Not Diane's name, someone else's. The deposit date landed 2 days after Christmas. My phone buzzed again. Diane was calling this time. I watched it ring, then opened the banking app instead. The verification deadline was still there, counting down. Across the room, Rosa folded a piece of paper and slid it toward me. "Now we know," she said. I stared at the name written in pen while the phone kept ringing, the listing still open, and the unavailable slot blinking on the screen. By morning, the account screen refused to load past a gray error bar. The withdrawal request spun, stopped, then returned a sentence that didn't explain anything. "Funds unavailable, pending review." The amount was the same. The date was current. The result stayed no. At the bank branch, the teller asked for identification and typed without looking up. "This account is restricted," she said. "By whom?" "By a linked holder," she said. "You'll need them present." The linked holder had already left 3 messages overnight. Diane's voice was steady. "I had to protect myself," she said. "You made choices." Rosa sat beside me while forms slid across the counter. A manager repeated policy and printed a number to call. The line went busy. The next call rang and dropped. My phone filled again. An uncle wrote that it looked bad. A cousin warned me to stop spending money that wasn't mine. Diane followed with a longer note about boundaries and respect. Rosa read it once. "She's framing it," she said. By noon, a client emailed asking why a deposit hadn't cleared. Another asked whether I still had a registered address. The kitchen canceled my next slot because payment hadn't posted. I drove back to Diane Street and parked across from the house. A neighbor waved, then hesitated. "Your mom showed a clip," she said, "of you leaving." "What clip?" "From the door recorder," she said. "Just you with a bag." The recorder by the back entrance that was out had worked long enough. The clip didn't include the table or the order to pack. It ended with the door closing. The neighbor said Diane explained it as proof I stormed off. Rosa called the installer and asked simple questions. The system had been disabled from the app, not broken. The log showed a change made the night before Christmas. Rosa put the phone down. "That's intentional," she said. Diane's story traveled faster than corrections. A family email arrived listing concerns about misuse of funds. My name sat under a subject line about accountability. At the county office, a clerk reviewed my business file and frowned. "This address is no longer valid," she said. "You'll need to suspend operations until it's updated." "How long?" "Depends," she said. The word covered weeks. Rosa couldn't fix the restriction or the filing. She could point at the pattern. She spread messages on the table and lined dates beside them. "Pressure, then isolation," she said. "Paperwork, then witnesses." Diane called again. I didn't answer. She left another message about family embarrassment and consequences. The kitchen emailed to pause my profile. A client asked for a refund. The calendar emptied. An email from the state portal followed, marked urgent. It referenced the same address and listed consequences for noncompliance. Rosa printed it and added it to the stack. A landlord returned a call and asked whether I was subletting. He'd heard something through family. Rosa took the phone and ended it quickly. Another relative forwarded the clip with a note saying, "It explained everything." The file showed only the door moment, trimmed short, timestamp cropped. Rosa pointed to the edges of the file name. "They edited," she said. We called the legal clinic. The intake worker asked for dates, names, and documents. When Rosa mentioned the restriction, the worker sighed. "That happens," she said. "You'll need counsel." Appointments were booked weeks out. At the county desk again, a supervisor confirmed the suspension. She slid a pamphlet forward and circled a line. "Cease operations until corrected," she said. The phrase closed doors. Clients asked for refunds in writing. One requested confirmation that I wasn't under investigation. Rosa replied with neutral language and dates. The bank hotline finally answered and transferred us twice. A representative read a script and repeated the need for the linked holder. Diane texted a family thread a statement about safeguarding assets. Replies thanked her for clarity. A supplier paused deliveries pending payment. The storage unit required proof of address. A venue asked whether I still carried insurance tied to the old location. Rosa organized the pile into dates and arrows. She didn't promise outcomes. A notice arrived by mail with a return address I recognized. It warned of penalties if activity continued. Rosa placed it under the bank letter. Calls went unanswered. Messages stacked. The calendar stayed blank. Rosa reviewed everything once more and nodded. "This is the same play," she said. The next client deadline passed without work to deliver. Another email asked for an update. Rosa set aside the folders and waited. Night settled over the table without ceremony. The pen rolled once and stopped. Paper lined up at the edge. Rosa stayed nearby, saying nothing. The phone vibrated again. Another message arrived. I kept writing, line after line, until now. The meeting room held a round table and 4 mismatched chairs. A clock ticked above a corkboard filled with community flyers. Rosa set a folder down and slid it toward me before sitting. The attorney arrived with a legal pad and a pen that clicked too loudly. "Start from the restriction," she said. Dates came out first, then names, then the account notice. The address suspension followed. She wrote without interrupting, nodding only when something connected to a line already on the page. When the questions paused, the room stayed still. I realized something had been assumed for weeks and never tested. Silence had been treated like neutrality. It hadn't slowed anything. It had cleared space. Rosa leaned back. "You thought not pushing meant safety," she said. "It meant access." The attorney looked up. "Who benefits if you stay quiet?" she asked. The answer was already on the table. It was in the clipped video. It was in the family email. It was in the restriction triggered by a linked holder. The problem had never been the lunch. Paperwork, addresses, witnesses. Those weren't reactions. They were preparations. Rosa opened another folder and placed a single page on top. A name was highlighted. "This is the person who placed the deposit next door," she said. "Public record." The attorney scanned it. "That's not random," she said. "It's a family friend," Rosa added. "Long time." The pattern settled into place without explanation. Control didn't require confrontation. It required leverage. Once that was visible, the noise fell away. The attorney tapped her pen. "You don't win this by arguing with her," she said. "You win it by being precise." Rosa nodded. Right place, right moment. A phone buzzed on the table. Diane's name lit the screen. I turned it face down without comment. The attorney continued. "If we proceed, there are costs," she said. "Time, fees, relationships." Rosa watched closely. "She needs to know what she's giving up," she said. That part didn't need elaboration. Family events had already thinned. Messages had turned transactional. Apologies were being offered to the wrong people. The attorney pulled a second form from her folder. "This authorizes us to request records," she said. "Banking, property, transfers." The page looked ordinary. The effect wouldn't be. "What happens if I don't?" I asked. She didn't soften her answer. "Then the story you've been given becomes permanent." Rosa reached for the pen and set it in front of me. "You don't owe anyone a warning," she said. "You owe yourself accuracy." The clock ticked again. Outside, voices passed in the hall. Someone laughed at something unrelated. The name on the deposit form stayed visible. It connected Christmas to the listing to the restriction to the clip. This wasn't about moving out. It was about being moved. The attorney explained next steps without drama, requests, deadlines, what not to do, what not to say. No direct contact, everything in writing. Rosa asked about retaliation. "It's likely," the attorney said. "Stay boring." That advice landed harder than anything else. Another message arrived. Diane again, this one longer. It mentioned disappointment and sacrifice. It ended with a reminder that family comes first. Rosa glanced at the screen and shook her head. "She's escalating," she said. The attorney slid the authorization form closer. "This changes the field," she said, "not the behavior." The pen felt heavier than expected. The paper didn't resist. The moment held, not dramatic, just clear. Signing wouldn't fix the account or the address. It wouldn't restore work already lost. It would narrow the path forward until excuses ran out. The attorney gathered the folders while Rosa organized copies. "We'll start with the deposit," she said, "and the linkage." The phone vibrated again. This time, a relative asking if things could be smoothed over. Rosa placed a blank page in front of me and wrote a date at the top. "For tracking," she said. The pen hovered once. Ink met paper. The signature finished. The attorney stood and reached for the door. Rosa collected the folders. The phone kept lighting up. I didn't look. The attorney called the next meeting urgent and didn't explain why over the phone. Rosa drove. The parking lot was half full, weekday quiet, nothing signaling what was waiting upstairs. The file on the table was thicker than before. Tabs marked property, banking, affidavits. "This isn't about independence," the attorney said. "It's about exclusion." She slid one document forward, a timeline. Transactions leading up to December. Transfers routed through a family friend. A listing date aligned with a deposit. "Your mother's goal was to restructure ownership," she said, "without you." Rosa traced the dates with a finger. She started months ago. The attorney nodded. "Before the lunch." A printout followed. Text logs subpoenaed from the broker. One message landed on Christmas afternoon. "Approval. Proceed." The sentence from the table changed shape. Paperwork's already handled hadn't been commentary. It had been confirmation. Another tab opened. System logs from the door recorder. Access toggled the night before guests arrived. That clip wasn't accidental, the attorney said. It was curated. Rosa exhaled through her nose. She controlled the narrative before it started. A knock interrupted. The attorney took a call outside and returned with a different posture. "She filed," she said. A petition had been submitted that morning. Negations of unauthorized use of family funds. A request for review. A relative's name appeared as a witness. "That's not right," Rosa said. "They told us something else." "They changed their statement," the attorney said. "There's risk to them if they don't." The room tightened. Evidence that had pointed cleanly now carried conditions: a missing confirmation, a bank letter not yet released. The flow of money can be explained, the attorney said, but we need one verification. Rosa checked her notes. That takes time. Time is the problem, the attorney said. The phone on the table vibrated. Diane again. I didn't answer. The attorney continued, voice even. She's willing to let this go public. That settled the last uncertainty. Reputation damage wasn't collateral. It was leverage. A courier arrived with another envelope. Inside was a notice acknowledging the petition. It listed potential next steps: review, inquiry, temporary restrictions. This can escalate, the attorney said, even if it doesn't stick. Rosa asked about response strategy. Do nothing publicly, the attorney said. Everything through counsel. Another call came in. The attorney listened, then set the phone down. The bank flagged the account, she said. Until we provide that confirmation, they won't release records. A clean circle closed. Restriction to allegation to delay. Rosa leaned back. She planned the gaps. The attorney didn't disagree. She planned for friction. Paper moved, dates aligned. The family friend's name appeared again, linked to a holding entity. The broker's office tied it together. This is coordinated, the attorney said. Silence followed. Not heavy, just final. What happens now? Rosa asked. There may be an inquiry, the attorney said. Prepare for questions. My phone buzzed with a message forwarded by a cousin. A warning. They'd been contacted. They hoped things could be cleared up. Rosa set the phone face down. The attorney summarized next steps without emphasis. Requests submitted, motions prepared, no contact, no corrections to family narratives. Assume anything you say will be repurposed, she said. A pause held. Worst case? Rosa asked. You're investigated, the attorney said. Cleared later. The words sat where they landed. Paper slid across the table again. Instructions, a checklist. The attorney stood. I need to be clear, she said. This is pressure. Rosa nodded once. The meeting ended without resolution. In the hall, voices carried from another office. Ordinary business. No sign of stakes. Outside, Rosa stopped near the steps. She's okay burning you, she said. The phone vibrated again. A missed call. A voicemail followed, already transcribed. Please stop this, Diane said. You're hurting everyone. Rosa shook her head. The attorney's card pressed into my palm before she left. Be reachable, she said. The car ride passed without comment. Traffic moved. At home, the email arrived. Subject, notice of review. Rosa read it, then looked up. This is real, she said. The phone rang again. I watched it light up, then dim, while the email stayed open and the cursor blinked, waiting for a response I wasn't supposed to send. The conference room was already full when Rosa and I arrived. Chairs lined the wall. Paper packets sat at each place, identical and unopened. Family members filled them without talking to one another. The attorney stood at the end of the table, arranging folders by color. Diane came in last. She nodded at a few people and sat without looking my way. The attorney cleared her throat. We're here to address the property transaction on Laurel and related financial actions, she said. This meeting is on the record. That phrase changed posture. Phones went face down. One cousin stopped fidgeting. The attorney gestured toward me. Emma will begin. A folder slid across the table. The first document showed a timeline of the listing, the price drops, and the deposit date. It was clean, boring, accurate. This is the transaction history, the attorney said. It includes the earnest money contract. Diane leaned forward. That doesn't prove anything, she said. You're misreading it. The attorney didn't respond. She turned a page and placed a bank statement beside the contract. These funds originated from an account linked to Diane Calder, she said, routed through a third party. Diane shook her head. That's not what happened, she said. She doesn't understand how these things work. A murmur ran through the room. Someone asked who the third party was. The attorney answered without emphasis. A family friend. Diane smiled tightly. So now helping someone means wrongdoing? The attorney nodded once. We'll get there. She signaled to her assistant, who pressed a button on a recorder. A voice filled the room. The broker's. Calm. Professional. Yes, he said. The deposit was placed per Diane's instruction. Under the other name, as discussed. The recording stopped. No one spoke. Diane reached for her purse. This is being taken out of context, she said. The attorney slid a second document forward. This is the bank's confirmation, she said. It verifies the source of funds. Diane looked down at it and didn't pick it up. An uncle cleared his throat. Diane, he said, is that accurate? She turned to him. You know, I was just trying to manage things responsibly. The attorney held up a hand. There's one more point. Another page appeared. It showed ownership structures and a holding entity tied back to the same friend. This demonstrates intent to conceal beneficial ownership, she said. That's a violation. The room went still. Diane laughed once. This is ridiculous. A legal secretary entered quietly and took a seat near the door. She opened a file and began reading aloud in a flat tone. Notice of temporary freeze on property transaction, she read, effective immediately. The contrast landed hard. The words sounded like any other notice. No wait, no apology. The secretary continued. Delivery acknowledged to Diane Calder. She stood and handed the document across the table. Diane stared at it. You can't do this, she said. The attorney met her gaze. It's already done. A cousin shifted in his seat. Another relative looked at the papers for the first time. Diane turned toward me. Is this what you wanted? She asked. The question didn't get an answer. The attorney spoke instead. This meeting concludes the presentation of evidence, she said. Further communication will go through counsel. Rosa exhaled slowly. The secretary collected signatures confirming receipt. Diane's pen hesitated before moving. Someone asked what happened next. The review continues, the attorney said. The freeze remains. Diane stood abruptly. This is a mistake, she said. You'll regret humiliating your own family. No one responded. Chairs scraped as people rose. Conversations stayed low. No one approached Diane. The attorney gathered the folders. We'll follow up, she said. Diane folded the notice once, then again, and placed it in her bag. As the room emptied, the secretary read one last line to herself, checking it off the list. Document delivered successfully, she said. The door closed behind her. Diane walked past without another word. Rosa touched my arm once, brief, then moved toward the exit. The table was bare again, except for the recorder, still blinking. No one reached to turn it off. The block filled up slowly as dusk settled over the street. Someone dragged a folding table to the curb. Another neighbor set down a tray without asking where it went. The house lights clicked on one by one, timed to a schedule I'd set months earlier and forgotten about until they obeyed. People waved as they arrived. Names came with faces now. Rosa showed up with a pan and handed it off without comment. She stayed near the edge, watching the flow. Across the fence, Diane's place stayed dark longer than usual. The porch light eventually came on, late and uneven. No one crossed her yard. No one asked if she was coming. The investigation hadn't gone away. It had quieted into process. Financial reviews don't make noise once they start. They just sit there, asking questions at their own pace. Neighbors noticed when Diane stopped hosting. Family noticed when she stopped explaining. A cousin texted earlier that day to ask what time things started. Another asked if bringing dessert was still okay. Neither mentioned Diane. That felt like an answer. The grill lid closed. Someone clapped. Music came from a speaker set too low to matter. Plate passed from hand to hand. A neighbor leaned in and asked if I'd moved recently. Next door, I said. She laughed, not knowing why it mattered. Phones came out for photos. No one aimed them across the fence. A message arrived while I was refilling cups. Diane's name showed up without a preview this time, just the name. I stepped away from the table and typed a single line. "If you're hungry, the door next door is open." The message sent without ceremony. No dots appeared, no reply followed. When I walked back, the house responded instead. The lights brightened, adjusting automatically, and a calm voice from the system announced, "Welcome home." Someone near the door laughed. "That's handy," they said. The phrase landed better than anything else that night. I poured a drink and raised it halfway. People mirrored the motion without asking why. The toast didn't need words. Across the fence, Diane stood on her porch. She didn't wave, she didn't step forward. She watched for a moment, then looked down at the phone in her hand. No one noticed but me. Conversation moved on. A neighbor talked about a new job, another complained about parking permits. Rosa told a story that ended with a shrug. At one point, a relative I still spoke to asked quietly how things were. "Busy," I said. They nodded and let it drop. The house held steady, nothing flickered, nothing needed fixing. Plates emptied and stacked themselves where they made sense. People stayed longer than planned. No one asked about the past year. The porch light across the fence stayed on. When the table needed more space, someone shifted it closer to the sidewalk. A kid asked if the lights could change colors. I said maybe later. The phone vibrated once more. No new message, just a notification confirming delivery. Document delivered successfully. I didn't show it to anyone. The night stretched without effort. When neighbors began leaving, they thanked me like this was normal, like it had always been this way. Rosa stayed until the end. She picked up empty cups and stacked them neatly. "You did it," she said, not smiling. "It's done," I said. She nodded and headed out. The street thinned. Music stopped. Chairs folded. Across the fence, Diane stepped back into her house. The porch light went off. I lifted my glass again, alone this time, and looked where she had been standing. The fence line stayed where it was. Solid. Useful. Then the glass lowered, the gate clicked shut, and I turned back to the table while the lights stayed on and the system waited for the next command.